friends. Dimitri here, coming to you from Michigan. First ride on this new, to me, 2024 KTM 300 XCW. And I'm just following Jay here. This is my first time really trail riding for probably almost 2 months. Or really, I guess 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Yeah, almost 2 months. So I'm taking it a little bit easy. Also trying to feel out this bike. This front tire is very not good. I don't know if it's the front tire or the front suspension, but the loose in it is pretty blown out. So I feel like I'm riding on a flat front tire. I need to ride it back to back with Jay's. I'm also trying to be somewhat careful. Can't crash today. And this trail is very fast. Might add a couple clicks of compression on the forks and see if that helps. I will say so far, the PDS part of it actually works really well. The forks, I think I'm not loving, partially because they're sprung stiffer. So they're probably not getting down into the stroke as they should. And partially because this front tire sucks real bad. Alright, I'm riding Jay's Husky TE300 now, also a TBI bike, and it's very different. This bike's way easier to ride fast. I feel so much more comfortable on this bike. And I think a lot of it is the tires, because if I'm just going through a steady state corner in this bike, it actually grips. But I feel like this suspension, especially the forks on my bike, are actually a little bit plusher. But this bike feels much more nimble. But you can definitely trust it a lot more in corners. Back brake actually works. I think the front end sits a little bit lower, which makes sense because this has the stock springs in it, and that other bike's sprung, or my KTM is sprung for a heavier rider. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's sitting on its ass. And it's unloading the front weight because of those heavier springs. And that's why I don't have any confidence in the front end. Alright, I am continuing to ride Jay's T300i. Jay just gave me his feedback on the 300 on my KTM, and he says he likes it. I actually like this Husky. I don't know if I would. They're very different, and I wouldn't say one is better than the other. The KTM feels like it's got, like it sits a little bit higher in the suspension, which it does. The Husky's lower. It also looks like it's got a pipe, so the power delivery is a little bit different. Husky's a little bit more revvy. The gas gas or the KTM is a little bit more torquey. Oh, why am I right behind Jane? This is all this dust. But I can ride the Husky fast immediately, and I feel much more confident on it. Probably because it's much more similar to the gas gas. I do very much like it. It's so dusty. Feels very planted. It's almost a little bit less precise, but it's very planted. And the back end is very, very flush. Like it just, when you land off a whoop, it's like hitting a pillow. It is very nice. The biggest difference in the tires is probably mid-corner. Yeah. Like I don't feel like I go through corners as fast. So when there's a lot of those sweepers, like on this bike, on your bike, I feel like I go like infinite speed. On this one, you got to be a little careful.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just familiarity for me. Like I don't think the same level of nuanced opinion as you do. But one thing that really impresses me about this is just like how smooth it is over like all the small and moderate hits.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just like the heavier fork or the revalve or the combination probably. But
yeah, you don't feel
a bunch of stuff, and there's just like it's like pillow smooth.
Yeah, you don't feel anything on this bike. It's
which is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It makes it hard for me to sense what the tire has to give, I feel like.
To some extent, maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's why it feels like it doesn't have a lot of traction.
The rear end definitely feels like it stays a little higher. Like this is more progressive.
Yeah.
In the corners and everything.
Yeah, that settles a little bit better, but it's also just lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, the difference in bars is interesting. That feels like it's got maybe a flatter bar, although Huskies traditionally have a taller bar. Dusty, dusty, dusty! Wow. As Jason said, chasing a taillight. I think the other thing that's taking me a while to get used to is the Brembo brakes. I'm used to the Bractec stuff, and it doesn't quite have the power, but it's almost more gradual, so when it's really loose, I feel like it's actually a little bit nicer. Because it is not as aggressively bitey. Like this front brake is very, very aggressive. You have to be super careful not to grab too much of it, or you will bite it, especially when it's this loose on some of these looser corners. Getting pretty close to the end of our ride, and I've got thoughts about this bike that are kind of interesting. So first of all, I'd say it's very easy to ride. I think the engine is very predictable, very, very linear power. The chassis itself feels very good. I think this is for sure the best PDS suspension I've ridden by far. So that's all really great. The bike feels pretty light and nimble and kind of light on its feet, which I really appreciate for stuff like this. So that's awesome. The front tire and the tires in general, I knew this going in, are pretty bad. They're worn tires. I think the guy just threw something on there that he had laying in his garage from 2001. So they're hard as a rock. Front moose is completely shot. It's like a flat tire. So it does not feel great, especially if you're trying to kind of lean into some of these corners. I don't have a lot of confidence. It just does this and then you fall down. So you kind of have to be aggressive. So I need to fix that. Step 1, tires. Step 2, I need to bump the idle up a little bit because it does stall a little bit easily. The gearing, I feel like, is higher than the TPI's stock, as in taller, because first gear, if you're out in the woods dicking around, first gear is, you gotta use the clutch a lot, so it's not ideal. So I definitely need to gear it down. So I think I'm gonna go with a 12-tooth front sprocket and see how that feels, just because that's easy. And a lot of people do that plus a different rear sprocket. But in Romania they run, oh, that did not feel great. So much for what I was saying about the PDS suspension. So I would say the linkage is still better for a bunch of this kind of stuff. If you're going plodding through the woods on really rough stuff, that's where PDS actually feels really good, because it's got a lot of that like quick travel very fast if you're going over root ledges or stuff like that. So I would say PDS is better on takeoff, linkage is better on landing. That's how I would describe it. So it's a compromise. The brakes are taking me some time to get used to. I'm used to using a lot of front brake, dragging it into corners, and here I have to be very careful because it's loose sand, and I feel like that's contributing to my problems with washing out. That's kind of why I like the Bractec stuff a little bit better in this terrain, but when it's loose and fast like this and you just want to drag a little bit of front brake, it's almost a different physical body motion with the Brembo than the Bractec, because you gotta like kind of barely breathe on it. I like the rear brake position. It's very easy to reach. I almost don't need a brake tip. The forks, I think the valving is very interesting. It's very flush. This is a 12 suspension valve for B-Class Enduro by the previous owner. And riding my bike and Jay's bike back to back, it's very, very noticeable. The valving on this bike, you don't feel anything going over roots and stuff. It's very comfortable for your hands. On Jay's bike, it actually kind of beats you up a little bit. It's much less flush. And it's also not very bouncy, so I'm used to riding my gas and actually almost kind of using the bounce of the suspension to do stuff, and it's making it kind of difficult to do it on this bike. On this bike, you just have to expect it to stick. You know, it's like driving it. What if you get used to driving a car that doesn't have any traction, and then you have to drive a car that's got a lot of traction? It's very different riding and driving, obviously, techniques. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. And yeah, generally I don't feel very confident in it now. And the big thing is too, as I've kind of playing around with it, find out that the spring is for sure too stiff for me, and it's too stiff for the where the rear spring is at, and it doesn't work very well for me. Just constantly washing out. The last one. So yeah, I'm very curious how it will feel with the correct spring, or correct springs in the forks, because I think it will be pretty good. Jay's also ridden it. He said he really liked it, but it is amazing how different it feels. So yeah, right now I've taken out a lot of the compression out of the forks. I don't know if that's something I'm gonna have to do permanently, or if this is just a way of, I'm just doing it by feel, what feels good. And I was trying to get it to stick kind of in the beginning part of the corner, and I think it is because I'm fighting the spring. Yeah, the bike is just very not planted. Like Jay's bike through here, you can hammer it because you can just feel very planted. And that's what I want this bike to get to as well. I think it's doable if I get the good tires on here. These tires are not great. This is a fun experiment in, you know, used motorcycles, seeing what it's like. Just seeing how much of a difference things like tires and springs make. Because that makes you kind of appreciate the setup that you have better. That's what makes it interesting to ride different motorcycles. And the cool thing too is like riding Jay's bike, just because it's so easy, it makes it, you have more time to do stuff like shift and do other things. Right, Jay?
Yeah.